Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news. There's no there. Those were the president's words this week when he was asked about the classified documents found over the last few months at his Delaware residence at a private office in Washington, D.C. But this morning, it turns out there is even more there than first thought. Federal investigators from the Department of Justice seized more than half a dozen items from the president's Wilmington home on Friday, including some documents marked classified after an extensive but consensual 13-hour search of the property. The president's personal lawyer disclosed the information last night, saying some of the records were from Biden's time as senator and some from when he was vice president. The search of a sitting president's home dramatically escalates the political fallout, if not the legal problems, after the White House consistently tried to downplay the significance all week. Well, it looks like things are finally beginning to implode for Joe Biden, and we're gonna see the latest tranche of unauthorized classified documents found in his home. We're gonna see the escalating calls for his resignation, and make sure to stick them to the very end of this video, when we'll find out how Biden's legal defense is already crumbling, as we speak, leaving no place for him to hide, kinda like those documents. You're not gonna want to miss this. Over the weekend, Justice Department investigators found 6 more classified documents in Biden's Delaware home, bring the total now to 30. That's 30 documents that Biden, either as vice president or possibly as early as when he was senator, did not have the authority to remove from secure locations. These documents have thus far been found in 4 different locations: a closet, a garage, a personal library, and a yet disclosed new location at the Wilmington residence. This weekend, Elon Musk suggested it might be a shorter list where classified documents have not been found in Joe Biden's personal possession. I mean, this is getting, frankly, insane. It's now being reported that the Justice Department is actively considering searching more locations associated with Biden for illegally stashed classified documents. Do you think so? I wonder why the exact locations have yet to be disclosed. But they, of course, all are associated with Biden. And then FBI investigation is just one part of this full-court press to push Biden out of office. Over the weekend, more and more Democrats have been busy doing their part, throwing Biden under the bus. I want to turn to the new classified documents that the FBI found at the president's house in Delaware. Was a 13-hour search that happened on Friday. It's just the latest revelation of the president having classified items that he shouldn't have. You've been in Congress for 40 years. You've handled classified material? For a lot of those years? Probably most of them. How concerned are you about this? Well, I'm concerned. There's a standard that we follow when it comes to members of Congress and classified information. The door to my office is closed. The person who presents the document to me takes it out of a locked briefcase, hands it to me, and watches as I read it. When I finished reading it, and he takes it back and puts it in the briefcase and leaves the scene. I mean, that's how carefully we review these documents. To think that any of them ended up in boxes in storage one place to the other is just unacceptable. Okay, folks, that was the insufferable Democrat Dick Durbin. And as you can see there, even CNN itself, the most distrusted name in fake news, is piling on as well. The legacy media is now openly asking the question, is it time for old Joe to go? Is it time for him to resign? Does look like we are seeing our first resignation. The New York Times is reporting that Biden's chief of staff Ron Klain is planning step down in the coming weeks. Rumor has it that he's been blamed for sabotaging Biden over his mishandling of the document scandal, and that he was indeed asked to resign either by Biden or someone who's actually in control at the White House. Regardless, it is the most significant resignation yet from the Biden administration. And it indicates that things are indeed shaky in the White House as we speak. In the absence of Biden's own resignation, Marjorie Taylor Greene had this to say, quote, "I was the first to say impeach Biden and the first to introduce articles of impeachment. Soon we are starting our investigations. My advice to Joe: resign now, because we're going to show the world the depth of your corruption and how you've abused your power." So we got the FBI investigating Biden. We of course have the special counsel that's just been appointed by the Justice Department that's investigating Biden. We've got the Republicans in Congress who are chairing oversight committees that will be investigating Biden. Do you see a little pattern here? But perhaps most significantly, we've got Biden's entire case, his entire defense, actually blowing up right before our very eyes. You're not going to believe this. George Washington University, the legal professor Jonathan Turley is sounding the alarm. that Biden's legal defense over the handling of these classified documents is indeed imploding and without any rational defense for his actions. For weeks now, the Biden White House has been telling us there's no there. There's nothing to this, the classified documents. They were just stored, quote, inadvertently. Biden, quote, inadvertently took the documents with him after his times. Vice President or Senator bitterly is noting that the evidence is literally militating against that defense when he's the defense he's calling the Immaculate Possession defense. Right now, as I mentioned, we have 4 not 1 not 4 locations where classified documents were stashed: the closet, the garage, the library, and the new location, the women in residence over the weekend. As totally pointed out, this suggests that they were transferred more than once and sent to different locations for a purpose. Now that purpose appears to be Biden's memoirs. Biden has been working over the years on a book that discuss subject matters like China in Ukraine. And yet Biden says that he had no knowledge whatsoever that he was in possession of these documents or that he ever interacted with them after his vice presidency. In other words, the documents just miraculously appeared in every spot where Biden worked or lived over the last 10 years, the Immaculate Possession over and over again, and totally pointed out that if any witness or forensic evidence shows that Biden did indeed come in contact with any of these documents over the last 10 years, his whole dubious defense collapses. Then it's over. So obviously, we're beginning a very, very close eye, very interested on how things develop here, but it does appear that Biden, like the documents, no longer has any place to hide. And some significant news: here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you that the people who the anti-vaxxers appear to be right. But he who did not get vaccinated, got a little Omicron or maybe even a worse one, but recovered. Now you've got natural immunity, and you have no vaccination in you. Can we all agree that that was the winning path? The smartest, happiest people are the ones who didn't get the vaccination and are still alive. I want to make sure that I'm not leaving any wiggle room for myself. The one and only Scott Adams is making a huge admission: anti-vaxxers were right, and he was wrong. We're going to hear for ourselves what Scott had to say. And we're going to see why so many pundits are saying, frankly, Scott, it's nice to have you to the party, but it's all little too late. You're not going to want to miss this. I'm sure many of you like me are fans of Scott Adams. I first came across this analysis back in 2016, when he broke from the legacy media herd, and gave very cogent arguments for why Donald Trump was indeed going to win the presidential election. He and I, of course, was simpatico on that assessment. And we were both right. And I've enjoyed his analysis ever since I've read one of his books. I'm very, very appreciative of his voice out there. However, when it came to COVID, in the vaccine, Scott took a very pro-vax, pro-mask mandate position, which alienated a number of his followers. But now in a video over the weekend, Scott has admitted that he was wrong. And that anti-vaxxers with a vaccine hesitant, as they're technically called, were indeed correct. And it was a solid admission. He reiterated over and over not only that anti-vaxxers were right, but why they were right. Take a look. The anti-vaxxers clearly are the winners at this point. And I think it will probably stay that way. And I don't want to put any shade on that whatsoever. They came out the best, they have the winning position. The unvaccinated have a current advantage. Because they feel better. The thing they're not worrying about is what I have to worry about. Which is, I wonder if that vaccination 5 years from now. Because really the anti-vaxxers, I think, were really just distrustful of big companies and big government. That's never wrong. It's never wrong to distrust government. It's never wrong to distrust big companies. Right? So if you just took the position, let's just distrust everything the government did. While you want completely. I did not end up in the right place. Agree. You would all agree with that. Right? I did not end up in the right place. The right place would be natural immunity. No vaccination. You should take victory. And I should take defeat. We can agree on that. Right? That my position is now the weakest. And your position has gone from the weakest to the strongest. And that we can just say that's true. The people who didn't give X are absolutely in the winning position. The web, you are the winners. You are the winners. Let me say that part with no ambiguity. You won. All of my fancy analytics got me to a bad place. All of your heuristics don't trust these guys. It's obvious. totally work. Now, that said, many people were pushing back a bit on Scott largely because of what he said at the end there. All of my fancy analytics got me to a bad place. All of your heuristics don't trust these guys is obvious. Well, that totally worked. Horus sticks, if you don't know, they're just simply interpreted frames or paradigms. So he's saying that, we started with the principle. You can't trust these gods, right? Don't buy whatever they're peddling. And he's admitting that that assumption or presupposition turned out to be correct. Now, many are pointing out there's a big problem with what Scott just said there. And it shows that he's a bit of a ways to go before he fully recognizes just how huge the victory has been for anti-vaxxers. A number of analysts are pointing out vaccine hesitancy was not solely the result of presuppositions that just happened to be right. What needs to be underscored here is that there were several scientific voices out there like Dr. Robert Malone, who have been on the cutting edge of mRNA technology, citing significant evidence for the vaccine's potentially deleterious effects. This wasn't simply a matter of guessing, right? For many, vaccine hesitancy was a result of encountering mountains of evidence that they claimed warned us against its use. I'm not saying they were right or wrong. I'm simply pointing out the vaccine hesitancy for many was not simply rooted in social prejudices that turned out to be correct. But that said, we do have to recognize another inconvenient truth to all this. And this, unfortunately, is why so many believe Scott Adams' admission is a bit too little too late. To make things even worse, those dissenting voices again, many of whom were top-notch scientists and virologists, like the authors of the Barrington Declaration, they were deliberately and summarily silenced, as the Fauci files are showing us in Twitter. Big tech suppressed, and they were mocked and ridiculed at best or reviled and vilified at worst by our legacy media. Yeah, that was the utterly unhinged Frankie Schaeffer labeling the unvaccinated bioterrorist again. We need to underscore the rhetoric doesn't get more dangerously degrading and dehumanizing than that. Oh, and it gets worse. How can we forget the mandates, all of them, most particularly Biden's OSHA vaccine mandate for all workers in all industries and workplaces above 100 employees? They were forced, again, that's the key word, forced to get faxed, or else it was resignedly noted that we went from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to get vax or starve. And so to admit that the anti-vaxxers were right, all the while ignoring those social and cultural horrors, isn't helping Scott any, especially to the extent that he may have even inadvertently contributed to those horrors. Again, I'm glad to see Scott's admission. But I do think it's just actually a first step. Again, I'm not pro or anti-vax. My position has always been to prioritize informed consent. No one, absolutely no one, should be forced to choose between getting vaccinated or losing their job. Get the job and you can continue feeding your family. I think that's beyond disgusting, let alone the dehumanized rhetoric spewed out by the utterly intolerant, tyrannical left, the neo-Marxist Maoists that pervade our legacy media. It's heartening to see how, now that the floodgates of truth are opening up, how many people are finally coming on over to our side, and I'm very glad to see someone as astute as Scott Adams being one of them. Alright, thanks for being here, folks. Please receive a big hug from all of us. Let me know down below if you like these updates.